Hey, welcome everybody. It's so nice to be here with you. Thank you for watching my little video. And I think today's topic, interests us all. If you're interested in Buddhism, you're, for the most part, interested in meditation. And so today I'm going to go through the kind of classical, old school teachings on the accomplishment of one-pointed meditation, focus. Well, hello, Tenzin Punsuk. Tenzin Punsuk saying hi in the comments there. Good day from Australia, Canberra. You say Canberra or Canberra? Probably neither, right? Well, welcome. So this perfection, we've been going through the 6 perfections of Mahayana Buddhism, and this one is called in Sanskrit dhyana, or in Tibetan samten, and that is meditative concentration. And that's the thing that everybody, when they sit down to meditate for the first time, they become aware that they don't have, right? It's something you acquire through practice. And so let's go through it, and then we'll talk about how, in the Tibetan tradition I follow, the Nyingma school, how we, it's a little bit different. But we're going to go back here to the classic Mahayana text where I made a little outline of Gampopa's chapter in the Jewel Ornament of Liberation, a Kagyupa text. But basically, when you compare it to the classic text, the Way of the Bodhisattva, or the Bodhicharyavatara by Shantideva, which is also the basis of the Nyingma Mahayana teachings. It's the Indian tradition that comes down to us in the wonderful Nyingma school is this Bodhicharyavatara. So it's the same. He throws a few notes in about the Kagyu way, but basically this is the beautiful universal Mahayana tradition. And just a word about how the Mahayana tradition came into Tibetan. It was sponsored. Well, translation of all those texts, what do you need? What's the first thing you need when you go to a new country? The Dharma comes there. Well, you need, monks and nuns. You need to realize the depths. Hi, Mark. Mark says hi. From England. Wow. So I kind of lost track of what I was saying. I was so impressed that you're in England. So that what happened was the monks arrived. There were probably nuns there, mostly monks. And one of them, the great Bodhisattva, Shantarakshita, was setting up a monastery, and it was going badly. And because there was opposition from sort of elemental forces in Tibet, and then Guru Rinpoche was called in and subdued those forces, and then the Dharma flourished. And with the support, state support by the king of Tibet, who was a Buddhist convert and very enthusiastic, the king sponsored like dozens of top flight people to go to India and learn Sanskrit, and then to translate these texts, and including, coining, as I understand it, coining new words in the written language of Tibet, so that it was very, very precise, so that everybody respects the job that they did. And so this is how it came in, how the Bodhisattva texts came into Tibet. And so just wanted to mention that. It was an all-out effort. So what's the definition of this meditative concentration? It is the mind abiding one-pointedly in virtue. And it's an interesting concept, the way Gampopa puts it from the sutras. because if you have a thought about I'm being virtuous, then you aren't in meditative concentration, probably the way we usually define it. But let's go through it and see what happens here. So in the Sutrayana tradition, the Mahayana tradition that came from India, not involving any Tantra, any Dzogchen, any Mahamudra, straight up Mahayana tradition. What did you do to establish meditative concentration? Well, what's the first thing you're going to do? You're going to find a quiet place, right? So not only that, but you find a place where you'd leave, and if you really want to develop single point of concentration, what would you do? You turn off all your devices. You get a divorce. You would, put your children up for adoption. I'm not advising this, but you left and became a monk or a nun in the classical sense. And how was a monastery? They go to a monastery, and monastery had a very specific definition. It was a place that was at least 500, what was it, arm spans? I'm trying to see here. 500 arm spans, so this length from the elbow to the tip there, a foot and a half for me. Oops, my thing went out of focus. So what that meant was that everybody's out of earshot. You have quiet and you have seclusion, and you renounce the worldly life completely. So why? Because you want to avoid afflictive emotions. So you want to be peaceful. Of course, in the Mahayana tradition, we're not just going to do this for ourselves. We're developing, in this case, these monks are developing meditative concentration solely so they can benefit others. I mean, of course, they benefit as well, but with that thought. But the approach is the same as the Theravadan tradition, the early Buddhist tradition. So why do you want to do that? And if you want to go back, what do you think? You think, oh, I don't want to be drawn back into afflictive emotions. I don't want to have that kind of agitation, edginess. I don't want to have, all the distractions of having money to deal with, an Amazon credit card. And, the gang I used to run with was pretty rough. They were always wanting me to get high with them. And then I fell under the influence of, negative teachers, really, it was bad. So that's what you bring to mind. I just don't want to do that anymore. So it's a pushing away. And then you monitor your own body, speech, and mind, because if you take all your own thoughts and values of the old way into the monastery with you, and the monastery was defined just as being far away, doesn't mean that it's a big glorious structure with gilded statues. In these days, it meant that you were far away, but you might be in a forest, you might be in a cave. The point was solitude. And of course, in practical terms, monasteries came together because people need peer support, but they also need to share resources, right? It's impractical to everybody being spread out all over the place. You have to have teachers, right? For example, and the Sangha. So then you want to isolate your body and mind internally. And this leads to 6 different kinds of practice. So the reason I said hi to the third person out there and everybody who's watching in the future. This is was a really fascinating chapter from Gampopa's Jewel Ornament of Liberation for me, because when you have to teach it, you really have to make an outline and go through it, and I gain a lot when I do that. So there's 6 different systems of initial practice based on what? Based on what's bugging you, right? What's still clouding your mind. You've gone away and you're in your retreat space, and what's you know yourself. You think about yourself. What's the first thing that, what's the first kind of feeling tone that comes up for you? Anger, jealousy, envy of others, or you just feel kind of stupid and you know, dragged out. Or is it desire? Are you thinking about sexual desire or desire for things? So for each of those, there was a classical remedy. And here's where we get the, you know, when you hear about the applying the antidote, right? If you're a Vajrayana person and you've never studied this stuff, you really don't know what the heck they're talking about. You think about Mahayana people, they're meditating shamatha and vipassana. What else would they do? But there actually are techniques. So they aren't foreign to us, but they're part of the package. First of all, if your main afflictive emotion beyond all the others is desire attachment, then there's the classic technique of contemplating ugliness. So you're kind of doing the opposite. You're thinking about the object of your desire. You're thinking about, well, I've got it. You can look at your own body, you know, what's it made up of? Blood, you know, urine, feces, lymph, you know, lymph, bile, and all of it's pretty gross when you start thinking about it that way. And this is the way that monks practice. And then they think about, oh, there's a woman or a man, whoever they desire, their body. You know, right now it looks really good, but, you know, in 50 years, it's going to not look so good, like me, for example. And, you know, and also when it goes off to the grave, you know, in those days they burnt, and they still do, in some countries, they would burn the corpses and they'd be around for a while. So you get to see them decay, you know, turn different shades of blue and black, and then smell, and it's not a pretty picture, right? So you do all these kind of meditations on the ugly qualities of the desired object. The object here is a generic term for what it is your senses go out towards. You know, what's the bridge that's created between your mind first? What way does the bridge go? Does your mind automatically land in that place or not? Then it may be for you that rejection, kind of hatred, aversion is to uppermost. And what do you think the practice is for that? Any guesses? It would be the opposite, right? So loving kindness. We've talked about loving kindness, right? So the techniques are all rather the same. You know, classical techniques on loving kindness, whether you're practicing them in the 4 immeasurables, the 4 Brahma Viharas, or as a separate practice of loving kindness, metta, or maitri. What do? You remember what you do, how to cultivate love when your mind is hateful inside? And it may be, you know, in our society, a lot of people, here in Salzburg and so forth, have made it a specialty because we have so much disregard for ourselves, disrespect for ourselves, sometimes outright hatred for ourselves. And this is not a basis for a successful Dharma practice. Even if you really like hating yourself, for the sake of others, we have to give that up. So it's a sacrifice some of us have to make. So there's a lot of metta practice going on in our culture for oneself. But in our Mahayana tradition, you know, we're equalizing that love for everyone. And how do you do that? Kind of step by step. Let me see here. First, people closest to you, then the relatives. Yes, this is the way his steps went for Gampopa. People closest to you, you generate love. That's easy, right? then your relatives, okay. Then for the common people, sort of people around, and then even more for them, kind of neutral people. And then to those, you know, in your town. And then they go out in all directions. I found myself doing this spontaneously myself when I was doing some metta practice, right? In the East, I'm pointing to the West, but everything's opposite on the internet. In the East, West, South, North, you go around one by one, all the way out. You contemplate all living beings, and then you think of love about them. It's really quite a practice. It sounds dumb, but try it. Really, really profound. And then when you get to the end of it, ask yourself, did I leave myself out? Why? Am I not a sentient being? So then so we've gone through desire, meditation on ugliness is the antidote, hatred, meditation on love, ignorance. I wouldn't have guessed this one, but it makes sense. And that is the meditation on interdependent origination, which is a whole area of study, important study that is, I believe, in Abhidharma. And it's good to study. I've been studying it in the last year some. Maybe we should do a little episode on the 12 links and really make me learn them. You know, in the monastery, you can just, and you may be able to, reel them off in order of the way that samsara is created, the cyclic existence around, and then the groupings and how they occur. So how, you know, how our consciousness is conditioned and passes from life to life. So we don't have time to do that today, but that's something you can study. You know, Bhikkhu Bodhi, really check out his channel, Bhikkhu Bodhi, Bodhi. He's a great older monk, and I think in his 80s, and he's a great translator. He's totally non-sectarian, and he's staying in a Chinese American monastery, I believe, in New England, upstate New York, maybe. And you can just Google Bhikkhu Bodhi and the 12 links of dependent origination, and you'll come up with a great talk there. So what about jealousy? Jealousy, usually what they're talking about is envy. It's usually translated as jealousy, but it's not like sexual jealousy. Here they're regarding to being envious of others. So what's the antidote to that? Well, you equalize yourself and others. You think you have that thought, you know, what does the Dalai Lama say every single time he talks, right? Every sentient being wants what? Every sentient being, every living being, humans, animals, anything you can imagine. These dogs that are barking outside my window, I don't know what that's about. They don't want to be barking and unhappy. They want to be happy. But instead, they're carrying on because whatever, their minds, probably. So think about that. And think about they don't want suffering. Nobody wants to suffer. Nobody gets up in the morning. Almost nobody, maybe. Even if they have a hankering for some kind of, you know, they have some kind of attachment to pain or this kind of thing, it's still not, they don't really want to suffer. They want it as a relief of suffering. So this is an important point. And people with cutting themselves, burning themselves, and so forth isn't because they want to suffer. They want a relief from suffering. They get some kind of unusual relief from that most of us wouldn't get, but it's not uncommon. That got off on a kind of a tangent. So then what about pride? Now, pride is a very interesting one. In my lineage of Buddhism, the Nyingma lineage, particularly the Dudjom Teresar school, we were all about now here I'm saying we're so special because we don't we don't celebrate pride, But Dongsi Tinley Northern Rinpoche, one of our main teachers, who lived here in the United States, he said, pride is really the worst afflictive emotion in some ways, because you don't see it. Nobody sees that they're being prideful. And this doesn't mean pride and the low self-esteem are not really the opposite of each other. You can be without pride in the sense of the word. We really should talk about this in depth, but not hate yourself or think you're crap. So anyway, but what you think is what's done for that pride? Well, you exchange yourself with others. You start thinking about how did the Buddha attain enlightenment? Well, he was always putting the needs of others before himself, the ultimate need of awakening. Isn't that wonderful? Isn't that amazing? So if all the Buddhas of the past, and in the Mahayana there's not just one, in the Theravada it sounds like ludicrous when I'm saying all the Buddhas. What does that mean? But all awakened, 100% perfectly awakened beings are Buddha. That's what Buddha means. Purified and expanded, literally. So all of them, without exception, decided that they were going to put the needs, everything, their complete motivation was working for others. So once you do that, pride kind of vanishes, right? Because look what happened to Buddhas. And so you have to give up self-cherishing. Boy, this is the phrase, give up self-cherishing. Doesn't that make you kind of cringe inside? I mean, we are really attached even to the idea of cherishing ourselves. But, to practice this gradual path of Sutrayana meditation, you really contemplate for a long time. I'm thinking about those dogs across the ravine. They stopped barking now. But you're contemplating, wow, what if I really cherished others? And mothers naturally learn how to do this. Fathers, I think it helps, but unless we ever expand it outside of our family system and outside of our tribe, so to speak, then it's no use for enlightenment. Then, so what if all 5 of these classical categories of afflictive emotions, and of course afflictive emotions are as numerous, as sands on the beach, sand grains on the beach. There's all different flavors, but they're kind of broadly broken down into those 5 categories. What if you have all those in equal amounts? What would you do? Well, that's where the meditation comes in, the thing that we call meditation. Shamatha and Vipassana, but particularly is meditation on the breath. There's many ways of doing it. Sometimes, you're bringing your attention back to it over and over again. As it wanders, which it will, you bring your attention back to the breath. The feeling of the breath going out. I think all of you know how to do that. I've certainly taught it enough times on my little channel, and everybody does, and the mindfulness practice people do. I believe there's some version of that, and there's a way of counting the breaths, and probably until you lose track, and then going back again. I haven't done that system myself. There's various systems of watching the breath, which involve, abiding, analyzing, transforming, fully purifying, and then there are also systems in the secret mantra Vajrayana. And those you do in conjunction with a spiritual mentor. And so in that relationship, be it whether you're one of 10,000 students of that great, Tibetan Lama, or whether you're, you found some village lama who has one student, doesn't matter. That's how through the process of the Vajrayana process, you aren't then avoiding, in that system, you're not avoiding afflictive, you're not trying to stay away from on the 500 arm spans away from town necessarily. There's a place and a time for that. But you're working with whatever comes up on the spot. And there's not a sense of avoiding, trying to apply an antidote like this. Unless you're really failing at your Vajrayana processes that you've discovered in conjunction with your teacher or teachers. So, which happens. We all fall off the horse of the Vajrayana, and then we go back and we rely on these Mahayana techniques. And in fact, you're not really even working consciously trying to change them one by one. So if you're intrigued, explore the secret mantra Vajrayana. Secret mantra is a synonym with Vajrayana. So where are we? It's 6:27, and I'm at the through the first page of notes. And the point is that if you're scattered, your thoughts are scattered all over the place, if you don't have any ability to abide, relax, and focus, then there's no way you're going to gain enlightenment. And our whole purpose is gaining enlightenment so that we can really benefit every living being. That's the way we think as Mahayanas. And people can go very deep into the shamatha system of pacification and through many different stages. And all this, again, Popa points out that many of the stages have the same names as in the Theravadan tradition. Their flavor is a little different. They can be subtle differences between them, but they're similar. And then there's a lot of, if you read the Mahayana Sutras, which you can do on 84,000, I don't know if it's .com or .org. They have many translated Mahayana Sutras, and they've only dipped in a few of them. There's thousands of them, I think, at least hundreds. You'll say, the Buddha went into the samadhi known as the profound illumination. So that's one samadhi. That's one meditative concentration. But in the Mahayana, there's different ones if you really are working with a Mahayana master. And basically, with shamatha, you're becoming more and more and more and more peaceful. And then lots of good qualities are liberated, including claims of clairvoyance, so kind of things that we would consider impossible in our Western scientific system become possible with deep relaxation and peace. So how do you increase it? With yeshe and sherap, and that with wisdom you increase it, and by dedicating the merit to all sentient beings equally. So next week we're going to have Aaron Weiss, who's just finishing up his doctoral degree. He's in comparative religious studies, but he's specialized in Tibetan Buddhism, really, and he's a practitioner. So he's going to talk with us, and he reads Sanskrit. So he's going to talk to us about prajna or prajna, which is a very specific kind of wisdom. And he's going to talk about jnana, which is also known as yeshe. That's a specific kind of wisdom. There's a lot of overlap between these two. So he's going to talk about in the sutra system, the 6 paramita next week. Monday is the perfection of wisdom, Prajnaparamita. which is totally sublime. And we'll learn about what do these words mean, prajna. What does this word mean, jnana? And how do we perfect our wisdom? Let's get into it next week. It's been great that you guys dropped by. Thank you. And looking forward to seeing a lot of you live next week, so Aaron will feel really welcome and appreciated. All right. Let's go forward into enlightenment for the sake of all living beings. Take care. Bye-bye now.